And when Irina mentioned it, I started recording immediately.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so now I pass the floor to the Deputy Head of the Counterintelligence Unit of ETF, Outi Karkainen.
Thank you, Inna, and good morning to everybody, and thank you for attending this meeting in spite of the technical problems. I hope you can all hear me well. Just raise your hands if this is the case. Okay, good. So big thank to all the participants who attend this meeting for a second time. First time didn't work out technically, and thank you for the ETF team working on this so hard, and thank you for the IT team at the ETF also for making this possible during these difficult times. So as Inna mentioned, I'm responsible at ETF at coordinating our support to the EU services, both to the headquarters in Brussels and to the delegations, as regards the the support we give to EU external assistance in the sector of human capital development, both in terms of programming and project cycle management. So from identification and formulation of EU interventions to support to the implementation and evaluation, as well as sector policy dialogue that is related to EU external assistance, which would be the case, for example, of EU budget support to a sector. And well, the case of Ukraine is a bit different from our other partner countries in the sense that there hasn't been any big EU intervention in our domain in vocational education training before the EU for Skills project that has started now. And while the association agreement was signed in 2014, however, ETF has been, as you know, active since '96, so already for a long time, and has gathered a lot of experience and has worked with the national stakeholders in various domains that you're going to discuss today during the seminar, starting from qualifications, occupational standards, education standards, to the decentralization, PPP, public-private partnership, and so on. So you know ETF already very well through these activities that we've been implementing in 1996. And I think ETF's role has been important in this sector because of the absence of larger scale EU programs to support that reforms. We have partner countries where there are large budget supports, like smaller countries like Georgia, where we have millions of euros in budget support for that sector and employment, and also, of course, education more in the southern neighborhood. So we've been involved with the delegation in the design of the EU for Skills, and we have agreed that we will also accompany the project implementation by what we call the content monitoring. It's a bit ETF EU jargon, this content monitoring. What we can understand it as content and methodological advice to the EU delegation and the national stakeholders how to keep the project on track. And by saying on track, we don't mean the classical monitoring exercise, which is at the EU jargon, is the results-oriented monitoring, checking that the specific objectives or outputs and results of the project are attained. It's rather an advisory role from the methodological and technical point of view, taking into consideration and based on the ETF experience in these various domains in Ukraine. And the content monitor is not looking only at the project, it goes beyond. It's also advising, or its objective is also to advise the project and the EU as the funder of the project, to see how the project can contribute to the overall sector reforms of the country. And if this is not taking place, and I mean things change during a project implementation, whatever could be done or becomes an urgent need during the implementation. And this basically materializes in advice, commenting on the deliverables, providing expertise contribution to different capacity building activities. And overall, it's a package that we have negotiated with the EU delegation. We've been doing this kind of work, like I said, in other countries where big projects are ongoing or have been ongoing for years in our sector. For example, Egypt, where since 2001 we're supporting by this kind of content monitoring over 100 million, almost 150 million EU project on that. We've been doing this very much also in Algeria, in Georgia, Azerbaijan, and some other partner countries, just to mention a few of them. So just to conclude my short intervention this morning is to remind that the objective of this webinar is really to put on the table, introduce, explain, and discuss the results of the ETF work since 1996, and especially in the in the new century, in order to pass all this accumulated expertise, information, and results to the new ongoing project and ensure the sustainability of this. We're not starting from scratch in Ukraine. And this is, I think, the main objective of the webinar. And I invite everybody to participate and ask questions, of course, in the way that Inna was explaining at the beginning. So you write in the chat or you raise your hand. And we take out of this webinar useful things for the implementation phase. I would like to thank you once again for attending this meeting. It is not easy for anybody not to have a real face-to-face contact, but I think that the sign that we are so many today already shows that as a team we're committed to make best out of this EU for Skills project. Thank you.
Thank you, Outi. Now we start presentation of the ETF work to support vocational education and training system in Ukraine. And we give the floor to one of the leading experts of ETF who was very much and closely involved in this work, Arjen Day, who will tell us about support to the development of national qualification system in Ukraine.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to share my presentation with you, and I have made this a type of presentation that's called a pechakucha. So every 20 seconds the slide changes. I've done that because we cannot discuss everything in depth, but we will go quite quickly. And my first presentation is about the NQF and the NQF implementation and the establishment of NAC. So what happened is that in the beginning, actually, there was a lot of concern about the quality of qualifications, VET qualifications specifically. Employers were very worried, but there was also the Bologna process that started to involve Ukraine. So there was this need to develop an NQF from that perspective, getting better qualifications in which we could have trust. So the NQF was adopted in 2011. This was a 10-level framework from level 0 to level 9. But at the same time, these existing systems continue to function as well. So the Razradi were still used, and they are still used until today, for instance. And now, one of the main successes right in the beginning was the development of a procedure for validation of non-formal and formal learning. In 2013, there was already a policy document adopted, and implementation started soon after that. The real change came actually with the, of course, the adoption of the association agreement. And in it, there are 2 articles that are dedicated to vocational education, and one clearly is, also refers to the establishment of the NQF. So it's part of the association agreement. Now, in 2015, we were actually in a situation, 2014, 2015, where we did not really know how we're going to move on, because all the attention in the Ministry of Education was on the law on higher education. VET and NQF seemed to be forgotten. It was the employers actually who kept things going, and that's why also Rodion is here. They set up this Institute for the Professional Qualifications. So what we did is we did a self-assessment of the people, saying, look, how is this work going? Could you please tell us what is not working? And these are the conclusions of that self-assessment. It showed that there were real issues, that a lot of activities were planned, but they were not taking place. So the new process started, especially after Lilia Grinevich was nominated to work out a new implementation plan. And this was done within very wide consultation. And that implementation plan was adopted at the end of 2016. And that plan is much larger than the NQF. It includes the coordination and legislative support to develop the national qualification systems. It includes updating the system for forecasting, developing different types of qualifications, validation of non-formal and formal learning, improving the quality assurance of qualifications, and ensuring international recognition. So also there was a high-level working group established, which was the interdepartmental working group with a lot of deputy ministers. Here's one of the sessions that discussed the progress and the implementation of this work plan. And I was in part of a few of these meetings. They were very important, and they really helped us to move forward. So a new model appeared. From occupational standards, we were developing educational standards, but also assessment standards. And these assessment standards were important for the validation of non-formal learning, but also for the assessment of graduates. So in the open space, you can see a lot of these documents. Now, in the law on education, which was adopted in 2017, there's an article dedicated to the National Agency for Qualifications. You can see there all its tasks and its role. It's really a unique body because it was established as a product of social partnership. 1/3 of the members are nominated by the employers, 1/3 of the members by the trade unions, and 1/3 of the members by the government, by different ministries. And we had a study visit in Portugal and France, where we, together with these main representatives of these organizations, actually explored the role in these countries, where also social partnership is very important. A conception of the National Agency for Qualifications was the result of that study visit, and it helped to move forward a lot of discussions. There was real joint cooperation between the 3 parties. Now, one of the things that we did to help what we saw is that there is not really a good website on the national qualification system. So one of the first things that we worked on together with the stakeholders was to establish a website for the national qualification system, which became the website of the National Qualifications Agency. And this agency also, when it was formed last year, actually, we immediately started to organize a training for all the members of the board. They came to Torino even before they were formally nominated. So, and the work started very quickly. Now, one of the main tasks at the moment is to establish the register. We've also given support to this through the ETF. This will be part of the website. This register is really including very many important databases that are going to be linked. Database for occupational standards, for qualifications, for educational standards, but also for people who who get qualifications, etc. So in this qualification system, there are different types of qualifications. There are education qualifications and there are professional qualifications. They are explained in the law, and in the next presentation, I will come back to those. And it's important to see that they will all be part of the system. Now, this is the last seminar that we did in December, and it was organized by NAC. And really, our role was more to facilitate the seminar. The real work was really done by NAC. It was a very interactive seminar. It really showed that NAC is already ready to play a very active role. So we are now in a situation where, of course, it seems that you're still at the beginning with the project. But I can tell you from our experience, when you start doing things, you can see that it becomes easier. And also, I've really enjoyed working very much with the colleagues in Ukraine. They really are able to take things forward by themselves. And I'm very happy that I've had this experience. So I will now stop this presentation and give you the floor for questions on this issue.
So, dear colleagues, do you have any questions? Because I don't see any questions for the moment in the chat. Do you have any questions to Arjen? Okay, there was Rodion, please ask your question. I see the question from Rodion.
Thank you, Arjen, for very interesting introduction presentation. That was really a quick but very solid, I would say, overview of the process or progress achieved. Maybe I missed something due to connection, but you said a couple of things about the register of qualifications, but can we see it somehow? Or if we can't, when could we do it? Thank you.
Yeah. What we can share with you is the presentation that were done, and I think they are also an open space. The presentations that we have made on the seminar on the register, you would have too in the big. And I think that really explains most of the functions. I have been in contact with Mr. Kaftunets also recently, and they are also talking with the company. So now there is an issue of transferring the responsibility from ETF to the agency, and this is all, let's say, something that is in the legal domain, where we try to have a quick handover so that Vintage can work with the agency on this and make it operational as soon as possible. But there are a lot of concrete steps already in that direction. So it will be soon open, but it's just a question of making sure that the agency can adapt it to its own needs. Maybe Volodymyr can say more about this, or maybe one of the other members of NAC. Yes, Ina?
Volodymyr, do you have any comments on Rodion questions, or probably Yuri Balanyuk, do you have any comments? Please feel free to, let's say, to enter in the discussion.
Hello, everybody. Today, as it's very necessary to have such seminar, it's the main point, because we don't stop our work, and we discuss very necessary problems, and it's very good that world is changing now, and everybody is in the Skype, Zoom, or other web services. And it's, thank you. How many people? 40? or 60? I don't hear.
Yeah, around 45 people. Yeah.
Oh, it's very good, and thank you, ETF and Mr. Aryan, that your organization have good organizing the webinar.
Arjen, the mic.
I will try to send the link on the chat of the presentation. And I see there are some other questions also. There's a question of Annelie. Do you consider the role of NAC clear, or are there still some unclear questions in the role and task of NAC? Well, I've seen that there is on the website of the Ministry of Education a proposal for the law on the national qualification system. So it's now in public consultation. I personally see some issues there. For me, the two issues that I see is that the law proposes a new selection of the board, and I don't see very well to what extent then that board will still be a collegial board, in a sense that they will represent the organizations that are behind it, because it used to be the joint representative body of the employers, the joint representative body of the trade unions, and the three ministries of economy, of social policy, and of education. I don't know to what extent that is still the case. If this law is taking place, there is also some issues about the labor market information gathering that is not foreseen in the new law. So that is taken out of the portfolio from NAC. So I think these are issues that need to be clarified for sure. For me, very important is that NAC is a quality assurance body. So when I see in that draft law that there are self-regulated bodies and they are not necessarily have to meet certain quality criteria, I get worried. And also I get worried if NAC doesn't monitor the institutions that are going to be accredited by her. But I think overall it's very clear. So these are just, I think overall it's very clear what the role is. And that is also confirmed by this new law. But there is an area also, I think the law could still be clearer. It's on the law of the role in the educational qualifications, where there doesn't seem to be much of a role for NAC. But in the end, they are all part of the qualification system. But I think we will talk about issues in the next presentation. Maybe somebody wants to react to these things that I said?
Arjen, maybe I can add something, but I'm not sure that it's my full responsibility to express the opinion of the whole ministry, because it's important to involve also the Directorate of Higher Education, which is responsible also for issues of qualifications in the Ministry of Science. Yes, we are actually now in the process of developing the draft of the law of national system of qualification, and also I think that maybe in the close future we will have the changes in the national qualification framework to simplify and maybe to make it more closer to European qualification framework. So we are on this way, and we are from Directorate of Vocational Education, we are very grateful for ETF for such big work in the sphere of qualifications. And also we are in good also communication with National Agency of Qualifications. Hello, and we are trying to produce and to provide some very important regulations in the sphere of qualifications, such as the criteria for accreditation of independent assessment centers and etc. So very glad, and we think that it's very important to have ETF on this platform for qualification system development here in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have also a question from Tetiana Biletska. Tetiana, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, everybody. I just didn't get Arian's logic. The point of view of ETF, is the task of creating national qualification website and for the agency as well as this website, is it completed or something else is going to be done?
So the website is never completed because you always have to put stuff on it. What we have done is we have created, we've helped to create a website. So the structure, what are the parts of the website? How does it look? We have looked at all the different websites that existing with similar agencies and organizations in different countries. So that has been built, and that website is actually, you can actually already enter in that website. It's online. You can see that the register is not operational in that website, so that still needs to be added in. And then, of course, this website will slowly grow. It will slowly have new information, and there will slowly more and more information on that website. So it's not fully operational, but it is partially operational. It's started. I will send also the link to the website.
Thanks for clarification.
And then we have another question, one more question from Rodion. Rodion, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, maybe my question, thank you. Maybe my question is quite technical because I really interesting in the procedures how to put the qualification in the register, but maybe it would be more understandable from the other presentations more dedicated to this issue. So I will postpone my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then if we don't have other questions, shall we pass to the next presentation dedicated to the issues of decentralization of vocational education and training system, the role of regional VET councils, and the role of Centres of Vocational Excellence. And this work of ETF will be presented also by the leading expert who also contributed in the work in Ukraine, Jose Manuel Galvin Arribas. We pass the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see my presentation or not?
Yes, we can see your presentation. If you want to put it in slideshow mode, if not, it's okay like this.
Okay, I will now. First of all, I wanted to express my happiness to be on virtual connection with you. My main message, my first message is just to convey you that I miss you, and I would like to meet you soon in Ukraine and in Kiev or in Torino or everywhere, because this is the truth. So this is my main message. I'm going to try to be very brief because I think you know very well what I'm going to say. But the main message that I want to pass now is that we have started to work in decentralization under a multi-level governance perspective with the mandate in mind. So my first mission there, I realized that decentralization, which is a political at the end mandate of Ukraine, was for the vocational education and training an opportunity for really grow and really improve the settings. Just also to keep in mind that BED was not attractive and still is not in Ukraine, but also it was an opportunity for seeing BED as an innovative policy to support the country. Our approach basically is also shared now with other international organizations. So UNESCO, ILO, OECD, or CEDEFOP are our partners basically now to also discuss on strengthening governance of a skill system in many countries around the world. We are working very close now with OECD on this issue. The first slide is just to remind something that I remind in many contests. So the first thing also that ETF we realize is just two key indicators that for Ukraine, on one hand, is up on the European Union average, which is the youth unemployment. So, and the other is the access. Access indicator is very important one. It's an indicator that I will talk a little bit afterwards also, because in Ukraine access to bed is below also to EU average. So the indicator on access is very important that we still work on it, and this is one of also my main messages, and disaggregate as far as possible to help understanding, in particular, the type of decisions to take from a systemic approach. So there is an analytical challenge there. So the first success story that we have in Ukraine, this is the work on the green paper. This work on green paper was a partnership work on which we identified the main pillars agreed also by the Minister of Education and Science, on which, let's say, the pivot in the reform from a governance and a financing perspective. So we applied this approach in a document that we select 5 pilot regions, also selected by the Minister of Education. And we brought in the opinion and discussions and analysis a lot of big array of stakeholders, and it created a wide consensus on which after this product was shared with even with the participation in a big conference at that time, the Prime Minister of Ukraine. So we identify 4 major areas. The big one is let's say, the good multi-level governance approach, but in particular, focusing on the information and communication areas, the institutional area, and the financial dimension. The second area, the big one, is optimization and rationalization of better school regional networks. The third one was better school management, financing, and autonomy, and the fourth one was public-private partnership in Ukraine. So somehow these 4 areas has been a kind of technical and also political agenda in many ways, because some of these issues has been tackled progressively by the Minister of Education and Science and other stakeholders. So what we did basically in this analysis was to provide a strategic approach to face the reforms in a big number of issues that we treat from the perspective of giving options. So issues and options, issues and options, issues and options. So this green paper is a kind of repetitive sequence in these 4 areas about what are the issues and what are the options, even highlighting in some cases the drawbacks of these options. So we jumped into bed image and attractiveness. We underlined the need on deliver a strategic national and regional vision. We jumped into the issue of the bed image and attractiveness. We propose also how to face the issue of multi-channel financing and the advice on how to revisit the formula funding issue, which is a very important issue yet, and I want to hear from you also about these issues, how are going on. So we jumped into the need for the bed to be seen also from a lifelong learning logic. And then we jumped also in the issue of the regional governance and regional bed councils, in the issues of discussion on what it is needed for the bed network, if merging, closing, or opening new bed schools. And we jumped there on the issue of Centre of Vocational Excellence and Innovation, also from the different angles as an option for forging public-private partnerships, or supporting the optimization process. And also we jumped into the issue of better school autonomy, which is the last issue that I would like to discuss today with you in my second presentation. So I want to remind really that there is a bit time that I am not visiting you and I not work with you there in the ground. But I think the main issue that I want to remind now also is that for Ukraine, the optimization and rationalization of the bed network must be on top of the agenda. So, and I hope it is on top of the agenda. Recently, a couple of months ago, we passed to the minister a short note on what are main options for discuss to progressing with this agenda. Which is somehow resolve the problem of transfer of property land of better schools in Ukraine. So on which, let's say, I would like to hear also from you, how is this lobby and this political process. So we also underline the need to integrate and agree and propose a battery of indicators, basically with the issue of access to bed. So, for example, there are a battery of indicators that can be elaborated to understand better what are the conditions of the school, in particular in terms of performance, which is, for example, the evolution of graduate for bed institutions, evolution of budget execution per bed school, employment rate graduate by sector occupation in regions, or contribution of schools on schooling bed graduates, or correlations between bed provisions in a school and priority economic areas in regions, etc. So this can open really the ground also for launching, and now that the resources are coming with the colleagues of EU for Skill projects, I think one important issue also is to evaluate the overall bed sector, or and somehow strategic plans. So I think it's the time also for doing so. I think also the next step that it can be done for optimizing the network and rationalizing the network is to make, let's say, a qualitative assessment through a guidelines for restructuring the school network, which is another issue that also we pop into it in the green paper. And then one important issue would be to come out with, let's say, a sound methodology for assessing performance, effectiveness, and quality of the network as scientific tool. And overall, this process should be wrapped up with a good communication with the community, because, of course, it is creating ownership and impact on policy decision, and it's a sensitive process which somehow is still not fully driven for this reason. Well, then talking about one of the options, key options that we highlighted in the green paper. So one is the Centre of Vocational, the setup of the Centre of Vocational Excellence in Ukraine. So and Ukraine really inspired a lot of policy thinking and also policy advice on how to set up this type of institutions. And we came up with a taxonomy on which basically Ukraine is ready. From our assessment, we did this assessment, this analysis with also focus groups, mobilizing actors, with the full partnership of the Minister of Education. So, and we proposed there that Ukraine could be ready for any of these options. because the network is large, the capacity is big in the country and in the community. Well, now there are resources also to discuss these different options, which could be from the creation of Center of Excellence from an independent training provider, which is, let's say, more based on the idea that also a company or a big company can have also a new center that it could be set up close to this company. The second one is the issue of how to set up Center of Excellence as independent training institutions created from existing providers, which might deploy extended functions. For each of these options, we provide some international examples. In this case, are also in the Eastern Partnership, Moldova and Armenia. The first one is Morocco, Bangladesh, and Singapore. The third option is Center of Excellence as a part of training institutions that we already observed that this option could be set up also in premises on which vocational education and higher education, so in this case colleges, are living together, and there are some international cases as well. Then the issue of Center of Excellence at network organization for feeding innovation and excellence into that community, and there are interesting examples there also in your country. And then the Center of Excellence as multi-profile or multi-sectoral provider institution, which is basically the options that we observe that Ukraine is discussing if we look in the concept paper of BET and other papers that recently you delivered. So my last slide, for this session, for this presentation, is just to remind the issue of whatever happened with the process of selecting Center of Vocational Excellence, that I think you are embarked in this process now. So there is an important issue that you cannot forget, which is evidence-based decision. And the evidence-based decision should be strongly focusing on the role of the regions. The role of the regions, because as I remind in this chart, so you see here the gross regional product per capita in Ukraine from 2010-2016, and you see that the Kiev city is by far growing in a speed compared to the other bunch of regions showed here. So basically the point is that you cannot forget or you have to keep in mind always also for the experience that other countries that on which we decentralized BET, like is my country in Spain, the equity factor and the regional disparities of so the decision on setting up, let's say, or making growing economies through empowering institutions that can generate really well-being and growth, so can even contribute on these disparities. So you have to balance the conditions for regional networks and also versus the national socioeconomic and regional priorities. So in this analysis also we provided more than 50 indicators to help you and discuss what is about the region, the demographics, the social situation, etc. And we really hope that you are conducting in successful manner this process. So for the time being, I stop. I hope if you have questions, but of course I will have also a lot of questions to hear from you how are going on these processes, because as I told you, I miss a lot to be with you in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions to Manuel? I don't see in the chat any questions from you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Now it's time for a short discussion. Yeah, unfortunately, there are not any questions. Any
Good.
questions or comments or probably some updates in this
Many
area? Yes. Irina, would you like to? Please.
Yeah, I will have a few words about this optimization and centers of excellence. Yes, as you know, the project there support the Ministry of Education and Science in the process of audit of vocational institutions and also of institutions of pre-tertiary education. And now we are we finished collecting data. And now our partner company, they are trying to make these online instruments with the analysis and visualization of all this data. And after that, we will have our eternal discussions with the regions. All these results, and after that this data actually will be like basis for a future program of optimization of vocational institutions network in the regions. And now we are trying also to gain some regulation for centers of excellence and to understand and actually to finalize the concept of centers of excellence. And I remember our last seminar, Manuelino Dessa, I suppose you have presented this presentation and also this approach for Ukraine, how we can organize the activity of centers of excellence. And now we are trying to finalize this vision of functions and actually the form of activity of centers of excellence here in Ukraine. And we suppose that maybe some part of these regulations will be mentioned in the law on vocational education. Aryan, I see that you has done its analysis. It's not done yet because we have only like this data, and now we in the process of verification this data, because some of institutions, they are putting maybe not wrong number, but with if we about numbers, it could be different numbers of zeros in this all this data. So now we are trying to verify this data, and after that we will present absolutely. And we suppose that maybe for Zaporizhia region, this data will be ready till the end of April, but for the rest, it could be like end of May or maybe beginning of June.
We have another question from I think from Aryan. Aryan is asking, what is the status of the draft law, new law on vocational education and training? Could you please update?
Actually, it's our eternal work in the Directorate of Vocational Education, and now we have like our eternal second reading of this draft. We finalized the work on the first draft, and now we are trying maybe to clear some parts of unidentified parts in this law, and we hope that maybe in a few weeks we will be ready for the public discussion with this draft of the law.
Do we have any other questions from participants? Probably from the EU for Skills project. There are any comments or questions? Okay, so I see that Manuel also is asking question. Manuel, would you like to ask your question, please?
Well, I just wrote it, and also for Irina, how is going on procedures for the transfer of property of better schools?
It's an interesting process because it depends from another bodies of power like Ministry of Economy and also from the regional authorities. And now we pass like to the Ministry of Economy. If I remember well, more than 50 documents for 50 vocational institutions for transferring property from state to regional level. And when they will revise all these documents, we hope that we will have the decision of the Cabinet of Ministry of transferring of this property. It's we have some difficulties with different vocational institutions. It depends on the state of this for property, because some of them have problems with partners. Some don't have doesn't have new documents, only the old one from past and from the Soviet Union. So some additional work should be done to prepare these packages for transferring. And it's also require some funding for preparing such documents. So it's important that regional state administration or regional councils also provide this funding for the vocational institutions. And in some cases, we don't have this. Mm-hmm.
Okay, do we have any other questions or comments on these topics? Yeah, we have a question from Ganna Ipatenko. Hanna, would you like to ask your question, please?
Good morning, everybody. My question is, maybe you can give advice how we can provide, how VT Council in the region can can show better their work, and how VT Council make this in your country, for example, in Italy.
Who would like to answer this question? Probably, I don't know, not about Italy, because it's actually not our country. We're all from different countries. Okay.
I'm going to refer, because I think somehow it's also part of my presentation. Because let's say in the work we are presenting from governance and financing, basically it is about 5 analyses. Okay, so the first one is the green paper I mentioned you. The second one is the guidelines for regulation of regional bed councils, and then we made an advisory paper on COVID. So about the regional bed councils, we produced this paper, which is let's say a kind of simulation of regulation on how regional bed councils should be activated in Ukraine. We worked in 3 regions. One of those was Lvov. We presented there this work. It is available from ETF site. And after this webinar, I promise you also to share more material with you and some other material that you don't have. So basically, in this publication that is an ETF and Minister of Education work together, there is the case of Italy. So basically, in this regulation, also we jump into the issue of capacities, nomination of people. So let's say, just to understand a little bit the how it can be improved, the role of regional bed councils, I think it's also a synergy from the side of the national level, but also I would say it's also you know, a kind of process on which the nomination and selection of the members relies a lot also in many cases in a balance between analytical capacities and managerial and networking capacities. So I don't know now in the particular case of some of the regions that you are asking for, but I recommend you just, or we will share with you this publication from the ETF on the regional best councils.
Okay, just taking this opportunity, I wanted to remind all the participants that we have already shared all the reports, all the outputs of the ETF projects to support Ukraine on our open space, and including, I think, the green paper referred to by Manuel. In one of my previous letters, I sent all of you the links. Okay, we have a question from Volodymyr Kovtunets. Volodymyr, would you like please to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, my question concerns decentralization and development establishment of centers of excellence. As I know, there are planned no more than 10 centers of excellence, and this network will not cover, for example, such important industrial region as Kharkiv. And Kharkiv demands a lot of qualified workers for its industry, but we, as I know, the ministry does not plan formation of centers of excellence in Kharkiv. Nevertheless, even if we create 10 such centers, we will not cover a region, all regions of Ukraine, and under decentralization policy, these centers will serve only for some selected regions. And I am afraid that it is not good for national economy development, because the needs of all regions are present needs of all the regional labor markets. And under decentralization, for example, Kharkiv will not train workers for Sumy or Poltava or other neighbor regions without reform of system of public funding of that system. How to resolve this problem? Thank you.
Okay, who would like to answer this question? Probably it's also a question to Ukrainian participants, not only to ETF experts. Manuel, do you have any? Okay, please.
I lost many parts of the question because for the problems with the connection, but I think it's more a question for Ukrainian colleagues. Some parts in particular.
Yes, may I comment also?
Please.
Actually, the description of action of the project also has some points about the reforming of budgeting and funding system of vocational education, and also it refers to decentralization process here in Ukraine. And when we are talking about the labor market, you know that we have in the ministry has the program, the special program for vocational education, like the financing of professions or occupations of state importance. So when we are talking about the necessity or needs at the national level, we can cover this demand by this program. But when we are talking about this decentralization, and I think that all of us understand that we we will have this decentralization process, and the financing of vocational institutions or tertiary education institutions will not coming back to the state level. So we need to understand how to provide this holistic approach actually to the labor, to the defining labor market needs in each region, and also how this process should be connected with the decision of regional authority to establish or to changes in that system and on a regional level. So we discussed with like the day before yesterday, we had this discussion with one of the experts of the project about the approaches, and we totally agree that we should save this possibility at the national level to provide this funding for vocational institutions for according to the demand at the national level. And we also hope that the project will help us to provide to develop this concept of future new funding system, and to also to understand how we can provide some or other payments from one budget to another budget, how we can to calculate this amount so it will be hard work to build a new system of financing of vocational institutions or vocational institutions network in the future according to all this process of decentralization. It's a challenge for us.
Okay, thank you, Irina. Do we have any comments on this question from the project experts? Okay, we don't have any response on this. I don't see any other questions on the presentation of Manuel. So then I should announce you that we are very good in keeping the time, and we are almost basically now at 10:10. We have a break, 20 minutes. So we can have a short break, and we will be back at 10:30 here, which means 11:30 in Kiev, I suppose. Okay, thank you for your attention.